Good evening. Welcome to this series of working with emotions. And over the past few weeks, the past sessions, we have been looking at different ways of relating and working with our emotions, mainly developing the tool of mindfulness. Mindfulness, especially presented in relation to this acronym of RAIN, RAIN. And we have looked at all four of those aspects of mindfulness. R for recognition, to recognize. A for acknowledgement. I for inquiry or investigation. And N for to nurturing. Yeah, so we have sort of touched on different ways of cultivating these different aspects of mindfulness. And for this session and the next session, I thought we can look ahead and to see what is the final goal or aim, in working with our emotion. What do we hope to achieve, and how do we go about achieving it? Yeah. Because I think different people might have very different ideas of what is the end result of working with our emotions. In fact, I think a very common idea or objective is we might secretly or openly wish to experience only pleasant emotions. So there's a whole category of different emotional responses that we get in our daily life, and we sort of divide them into two groups. And in the group that we want, the so-called outcome of our work with emotion is we only want to experience the pleasant one. Whatever they are, so long as they feel pleasant, they go into this group. And what we don't want to experience, we somehow want to, or secretly hope to get rid of all of them, is emotions that are unpleasant. There's something unpleasant about them. They all go into this category and we want to check it out. So that we almost, maybe we are not so blatantly admitting to it, but we want to go through life feeling only pleasant feelings. So regardless of what is going on, even if your roof is blown up or your car is smashed and who knows what is happening to you, we just want to, almost like we just want to bliss out. Because only pleasant emotions, isn't it? No place for any sense of anxiety or worry or anger or feeling hurt, feeling and so on and so forth. No, and nothing unpleasant, all gone, finished with. But if I were to, you probably wouldn't put it quite like the way I do. But if we pause and think about it, is that really a happy life? A life in which somehow you only experience only 50% of the sort of emotional responses that are possible for human beings. Somehow there's another half of the entire range of emotional experiences are gone, disappeared. Is that really a good thing? I don't know. No, it's almost like going through life bliss out. And sometimes I think maybe on paper, or we just talk about it in this way, or we just think maybe a bit more superficially about it. That might be a good thing, especially when we are going through hard times, when we are overwhelmed by painful or difficult emotions. That seems very attractive. But is that the only option, the only alternative? Of course, we don't want to be overwhelmed and drowning in unpleasant feelings and emotions, to be constantly feeling anxiety or fear, or to be again and again feeling hurt, feeling insecure, uncertain, and worries. So of course we don't want our moment to moment of our life to be filled with unpleasant emotions. But is the alternative to that necessary one of only feeling pleasant emotions. And I'm offering another way of looking at it, another possibility for you to consider, that maybe the aim of learning to work with our emotions, especially with mindfulness, learning to be open and receptive to the entire range of emotional responses possible for human being. It's not so much that we either we only feel pleasant emotions, or another image is sometimes I jokingly say that we cultivate emotional flatline, which is another image you could have, like you don't feel, literally don't feel anything at all. There's no ups and downs. No, it's just completely flat. And that is also another possibility, which doesn't sound very attractive when we say it in this way. What would be another option available to us? And I think another possibility is not so much that we feel less, we are excluding or we are getting rid of certain kind of emotions, we evicting them, but more the opposite. We have a much richer emotional life because we are more open to allow in different kind of emotions, different kind of feelings in response to different situations in our life. But at no point do we feel that we will be overwhelmed by those emotions. At no point do we fear that we will be stuck with any particular emotional responses. In fact, we have great confidence in the flexibility of our own mind and heart, that we are responsive, that we simply able to respond in different ways to changing circumstances, and that at no point along the way will we ever be stuck or overwhelmed or drowned in those different emotional responses. Instead, we find that our emotions coming forth naturally, spontaneously, is another source of information that we can recognize, we can acknowledge. It tells us something, about ourselves and how we are relating to what is happening in our life, and that we can invite that in, and by taking a closer look at the situation, at our feelings, it gives us more information of how that situation is affecting us, and help us find or make wiser choices and decisions. Help us in acting, putting into actions things that we need to do to deal with the situation. So instead of a truncated emotional life, we actually end up with a much richer emotional landscapes, because we no longer fear any particular emotions. We can welcome them as our response to what is going on in that moment, and also knowing that we will not be stuck with it. We are flexible enough that when situation change, our feelings will also change. So at no point will we be sort of sentenced, like permanent sentence to feel or a particular emotions. Or, no, so not like that. In fact, there is great confidence in our own heart is able to respond appropriately to the situation. So I find that much more attractive, one of increased flexibility as opposed to one of fixation. Fixation is when I increasingly, let's say anxiety, increasingly I'm feeling more and more anxious about more and more situations in my life. It's almost like it's sort of multiplying. More and more things are cause for anxiety, anxious response. And more, in order to avoid that awful feeling of anxiety, I have to limit my behavior, limit my circumstances, in order to avoid that feeling, in order to not feel that feeling. Eventually, I might end up living in a shoebox, so to speak. There is a limited choice of activities, limited choice of circumstances that I allow myself to enter into. Because anything outside of that shoebox of existence would just trigger my anxiety, and that is too frightening, that's too overwhelming, and I can't deal with it. So that's how I have to carry on living. And that is the opposite extreme of increasing limitation. Whereas I envision the result of working with emotions is a decrease in limitation, an increase in our confidence of what we can handle, what we can deal with, and the more we are able to normalize and view the different emotions as just, yet another source of information of how I am responding or reacting to that situation. And it's something helpful. It helped me to make see the situation clearer, help me to make better decision, better choices. It help to motivate me to act in a way that is helpful. All right. So I hope I've been blah 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 on for a while. I hope that gives you a little bit of an image of where we are aiming towards when we work with emotions. At least in this series, that's where I'm heading. A richer life, emotional life, one of increased flexibility that offer greater options and choices, and with this better relationship with our inner emotions, we see them as a source of information, not as a source of torment or as a source of like we don't have to demonize our different emotional reactions. We can see them as telling us something about ourselves, about the situation that we are in. And then on that basis, emotions are actually motivate us to act. And so we can harness that power of our emotions so to help us to act, but act in in a wise way, making better choices. Okay, so with that in mind, so let's look at how we can use the skill of mindfulness to facilitate that. Now that we have gone through the four aspects, so how do we make use of mindfulness to deal with and relate with the different emotional responses, and so that we become more responsive, more flexible. We don't actually get stuck, which is quite common. Like with strong emotions like anger, we get very fixated on the situation, on the person, and we find ourselves sort of recycling the emotions, the situation, and reinforcing that habit of reaction. And so we can get angry or stay angry for a very long period of time in relation to that person or to that event. So in a way, we become, instead of being flexible and responsive and able to move on, we get stuck in the past. And find ourselves revisiting it over and over again. Find ourselves feeling those same old feelings over and over again. Right. So how can mindfulness help me deal with this? Especially those emotional reactions are pretty strong and pretty powerful. They seem to hijack my attention, whether I like it or not, and drag my attention back into those memories, could be painful memories, drag my whole system back into that kind of reactions. So how can I work with that? And in a way that actually increase my responsiveness, my flexibility. So let's look at mindfulness again. In situation like that, one of the most easy way to start working with it is strong emotional reactions tends to be perpetuated, sustained by a certain kind of thinking pattern. Let's say I am anxious, then that anxiety is fueled and sustained by a particular way of thinking about the situation or whatever it is. Yeah. If you pay attention, we pay mindful attention, we will really catch those very familiar train of thought that's sort of spiraling round and round and round. Of course, in a vicious cycle. The more we think in that way, the more we reinforce that feelings, that reaction, and sometimes it gets stronger and stronger. Yeah. So the thinking pattern is the easiest way to start, to apply mindfulness, to recognize the familiar feel to the way of thinking, and to acknowledge, oh, I think I'm getting more and more anxious, or more and more angry, or more and more attached, or whatever it is. Yeah. So we start with the thinking, we recognize, we acknowledge it, and then we can inquire. But this time, to work with this kind of emotional reaction, it's good not to just focus on a thought, but bring our attention down the body. What else is happening while I'm thinking those thoughts? While I'm thinking anxious thoughts? While I'm thinking angry thoughts? While I'm thinking thoughts of sadness, thoughts of longing? What is going on in my whole system? Not just the thoughts. Something else is happening here, isn't it? Something is happening in my body as well. Something is happening in my own heart. There's certain feelings being stirred up. Is it possible for me to be mindful of myself as one whole system, not break it into bits and pieces and focus on one part and ignore the other part, but maybe try to heal the whole system, bring everything back together, so that there are thoughts, there are bodily sensations, there are also feelings, and how the three and any other aspects of it are interacting with one another, and to see oneself as a whole instead of or as separate parts. So while we notice, become aware of the thoughts, we learn to also send our attention into the body and notice the bodily sensations associated with those thoughts. And maybe a bit harder, but also start to notice the different feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, depending on how we describe it. So try to notice all the different things happening at the same time as our attention is drawn repeatedly into a certain way of thinking about the situation, as we are reacting to that situation. This is, of course, much more difficult to do on the spot. So I'm talking more of subsequent to it. When we have a chance to meditate, we can revisit the events. And sometimes even if we don't try, the whole event will come back to mind because we are still very much caught up with it. And when we are able to expand our awareness, to take in all these different aspects, to recognize not only the thoughts, but also the associated bodily sensations, the feelings, and to give acknowledgement to all of them as one whole system, to acknowledge them let them into our awareness, and to inquire, oh, what is going on? What is happening here? So that really get us to be fully in touch with our feelings, with our emotions. And that's really one of the important things that is very healing, that we are no longer trying to keep certain emotions at bay, away from us, or we are not trying to suppress them or deny them, nor are we escalating them. Simply without mindfulness, allowing our attention to just follow those way of thinking and finding ourselves escalating the emotions because our thoughts, we get carried away. Like I often find myself feeling angry over imaginary situations that never happen. This didn't happen. I have certain encounter with a person, then subsequent to that, not only do I remember the past encounter, I also creatively imagine future encounters and get upset over them. If you look at it this way, it's a bit silly, isn't it? It's almost like creating more suffering for myself. And all of those suffering is imaginary. The situation is not real. It hasn't happened. And most of the time, they never did. So instead of escalating our emotional response or suppressing it or denying it, Instead, we simply, with mindfulness, welcome it in, really acknowledge it. It's almost like we really listen to our emotions. We allow our emotions to flow through us, to say what it has to say, to react and respond to the situation in the way we are reacting and responding. And you will find that sometimes, by giving such mindful attention to it, our system, after it's like venting. We vent it, and then we are at peace with it. We can put it aside because after all, the event is over, right? It's something in the past, and we are simply reacting to the memories of it. And we find ourselves in a different place. We are now free of that old response, and we are free to see the whole event differently and come up with a different way to respond to it, to deal with it. And hopefully, we are nurturing a more wholesome way of responding, a more effective way of responding to the situation, something better than our previous reaction, which is, of course, instinctive or spontaneous. So maybe previously I just get angry, I just get upset, and now having worked through that, allow it to arise and flow through my system and be done with it. Now, looking back at that situation, I might decide to see it differently and come to feel differently about it, think differently about it. And the next time I have that encounter with this person, I find myself spontaneously respond in a different way. Not out of anger, but maybe out of something more wholesome and more constructive, out of a sense of understanding or compassion or whatever. Yeah. So that's the idea behind using mindfulness to work with the different emotions, to facilitate this process of allowing the emotions to come forth, and allowing ourselves to flow through us, and then be done with it. Okay, so let's look at it, how we can, through meditation, put some of this into practice. So here, I make use of a simple device, a label that I call two labels. One is called thinking, and one is called sensing. So we'll start with the first step of recognition. Right? We train our mindfulness to be able to differentiate easily, or even spontaneously later when we are familiar with it, when our attention is with thinking. Not in a judgmental way, but just matter of fact, noticing, oh, I'm thinking. That's what my attention is preoccupied with. Also learn how to, in other moments, recognize that my attention is with sensing. Sensing means with my physical senses. That means I'm aware of the sound. Usually I have micro, so there's no sight, but there's sound. And they're definitely bodily sensations. So I'm sensing the sound, the bodily sensation of this moment. Yeah. So I learned to recognize these two different activities of the mind, of my attention. And in the case of a meditation, I learned to invite my attention to step out of thinking and come back to sensing. Thinking, most of the time, although thinking can be related to what is happening here and now, most of the time meditation thinking has to do with the past, or to do with the future, or to do with some of those imaginary situations I talk about. So they are away from here and now. So I invite my attention to step out of thinking, come back to here and now, to sensing. Right? So this is with recognition. Recognize what is going on in this moment. Acknowledge what is happening. Acknowledge that, oh, I'm thinking again. Yeah, without being upset, without feeling frustrated. Just simply acknowledge. This is thinking. That's what is happening. And if I want to change, then I just invite my attention. No problem. Step out of thinking, come back to sensing the breath, sensing the body, sensing the sound in the surrounding, sensing in here and now in this moment. And then, of course, we can inquire. When something is stirring up our reaction, you may find that what we are sensing is very closely tied to what we are thinking. Body tensing up, heating up, all sorts of different bodily sensations, and also certain feelings are also present here. Can we recognize those? Can we acknowledge them? Can we inquire and listen closer to what is actually going on when we are reacting to a certain situation? Give it our full attention. And then when we are able to fully recognize, acknowledge, and get to know it, it's almost like we really listen to what the body and mind has to say. Then you will find that it facilitates the moving on of those emotional responses. And then we are free to choose what to nurture as a way to respond to the situation. All right, enough of my theoretical description. So let's do a meditation on thinking and sensing. So I invite you to settle into a comfortable meditation posture wherever you are. You can be sitting on a chair, sitting on the floor on a cushion. You can feel free to lie down on the floor. Good to have a mat, yoga mat or whatever, or a rug, or you can lie down on a firm bed or lounge chair or whatever. So just take care that your posture supports your spine in a natural way. You're not introducing additional strain or tension into your spine, especially your neck and your lower back, and that they are as comfortable as possible. So I'm going to ring this bell and to signal the start of this meditation. So let's give our body some time to adjust, to find its way into our meditation posture. See if we can help the body to feel that it is well supported and balanced in this posture. Become aware of how in the posture our body is resting on a support or surface that feels very solid, firm, and stable. And the whole posture conveys a sense of balance and safety to the body. Sometimes this will help to trigger a natural response from our own body, one that encourages the body to loosen up, to unwind, to put aside some of those unnecessary tensions and tightenings in the different parts of the body. And we may yet find the body is able to settle down more and more comfortably into the posture. And next, we are going to invite our attention to come back to reconnect with the body, with the bodily sensations throughout the body. This reconnection of attention with the body, the connection of body and mind, really facilitate this process of unwinding, of loosening up. Almost as the body notices more and more that there is no need for it to be so tight, so tense, that there is no reason for it to sustain this state of stress or distress. The body, in its own wisdom, can start to let go. So let's return our attention with a light touch to the crown of the head. Notice sensation here at the crown. And just let our attention travel down to the face so that we are in touch with sensations at our own face. Notice whether we are tensing up any of the facial muscles. And if we are, see if it's possible, consciously, gently, for us to relax at least some of those tensions. Relax the muscles of the forehead, or the muscles around the eyes, or the muscles of the jaw. See if we can welcome in a feeling of softening, a slight sense of ease and comfort, or even relaxation into our own face. And let's continue downwards. Become aware of sensations at the throat, at the neck. Just a light touch without much effort. Likewise, moving at your own pace without the need to follow what I'm saying. How about your shoulders? Notice sensations at both shoulders. Acknowledge any tightness or discomfort here, since it's very common for us to store a lot of tension at the shoulder region. Notice sensations down both arms at the same time. Become aware of sensations at our upper arms, subtle sensations at both elbows, further down into the forearms, and into the hands. Be aware of the touch of the hands. Sensations also in the fingers. And just as before, we give permission and allow the arms to rest comfortably on their support. And then continue on at the chest. We invite our attention to come back to notice sensations here at the chest. So throughout the meditation, we may find ourselves having to come back here and now, return our attention to notice what is going on in this moment. And this is a part of meditation. There's nothing wrong about it. Notice sensation at the chest. And then moving further down, sensations at the abdomen. Sensations not only at the skin level or the muscles, but imagine our attention can reach in and sometimes notice sensations deep within our body. And also, not only do we pay attention to the front of our body, we also do not neglect the back. So we become aware of sensations at the upper back, sensations at the middle back, and likewise sensations at our lower back. Where necessary, we can allow the back, the spine to adjust, to move, to find a more comfortable, a more suitable position. And let's gather our attention at the pelvis so that we are fully aware of sensations here at the pelvis. The pelvic region is where powerful muscles gathered, as well as the various vital organs. And we can really sense the weight of the pelvis resting on our seat or on our support. See if we can mentally give permission. Imagine and allow the weight of the pelvis to rest as comfortably as possible on its support. We allow attention to travel down both legs, starting from the hips, noticing sensations as we move further down towards the knees, down to the ankles, and eventually into both feet. See if we can rest both of our legs comfortably on the support, on the floor, on wherever it is they are resting on, and surrender their weight to gravity. So we rest the body in this posture. We can think to ourselves that given time, the body will continue to release, to unwind, to put aside unnecessary tension and tightness, and will feel more and more at ease and comfortable in the posture. We rest our attention, our mind, here and now with our body, with the different bodily sensations in the different parts of the body. We can rest our mind also with the breath sensations happening in our body. And likewise, occasionally, we rest our attention with the sounds that come to us in our surrounding or within our own body. And when we are doing so, now and then we can label it with the word sensing, which is what our attention is preoccupied with here and now. Coming back to this moment here and now, sensing the breath sensations, sensing other bodily sensations, tensing, relaxing, hardness, softness, heaviness, lightness, and also maybe sensing the sounds in the surrounding. Resting in this moment, now and then our attention will be drawn due to past habits to thinking about the past, about the future, about some fantasized reality. When we become aware of it, when we recognize it, see if you can gently label that as thinking, without judgment, without frustration, and knowledge that's what your attention is preoccupied with. You might want to inquire into what you are thinking, but sooner or later, invite attention to come back here and now, to come back to sensing. Sensing what is going on in your body in this moment. Maybe some feelings might be arising. See if you can sense that. Recognizing what your attention is preoccupied with, thinking or sensing, invite your attention to come back here and now to the present moment. Come back to sensing the bodily sensations, the breath, sensing any feelings that might be arising, pleasant or unpleasant. And see if you can connect the different aspects of ourselves, connect the thoughts to the bodily sensations, to the feeling, so that they come back together as a whole. Coming back to the present moment, see if we can practice mindfulness. We can recognize what our attention is preoccupied with. We can acknowledge it. We can apply a simple label, thinking or sensing. We can inquire at times when we want to, what are we thinking about? What am I feeling in this moment? What am I sensing here and now? But see if you can, again and again, invite your attention to come back and rest in this moment. Rest here and now with sensing. So coming back to sensing, noticing bodily sensations, maybe the breath, maybe the sounds in the surrounding. Recognize, acknowledge what is happening here and now. And also become more in tune when our attention is drawn into thinking, more in tune with the different thoughts that preoccupy our mind, our attention. See if we can recognize them for what they are, acknowledge them, label them as thinking, and learn to shift our attention out of the thoughts, back into here and now, back to sensing. Each time we are able to recognize our attention is caught up in thinking, each time we are able to return our attention to sensing, connecting the mind with the body, connecting thinking about past or future, with sensing what is going on in our body, in our own heart. We are taking the power away from old habits or emotional reactivities. Instead, we're empowering our awareness, our mindfulness. We're empowering our ability to see things clearly and to make wiser choices instead of simply blindly following old habits or reactions. So see if you can patiently, gently come back here and now. Notice what your mind, your attention is doing. And invite your attention to settle back into sensing. So, welcome back. And I hope that meditation makes some sense, thinking and sensing, and connecting our thoughts with our bodily experiences, with our senses, with our listening, with our feelings, with the different bodily sensations. It's very healing because our problem, maybe aggravated by our modern living, is a kind of a splitting the head from the body, from the heart, splitting the mind from the body. There's a lot of fragmentation within ourselves. And then we get caught up in one part of it, quite often caught up in our thoughts, caught up in our memories, caught up in our fantasies. Or the other way is to caught up in certain feelings. And we don't have a handle of how to relate to those feelings. It seems very threatening, it seems very overwhelming. When we connect everything back together with awareness, we can actually see how they interact with one another, how they feed upon one another, and therefore how we can help them to move on, to shift, to change, to flow on. Thoughts, quite often, maybe not in this session, but on other occasions, are very preoccupied. Maybe with the past, we find ourselves revisiting a certain event and reacting to it in thinking. We may find ourselves projecting to the future and again be preoccupied with it and reacting to it. Or we may find ourselves imagine all sorts of imaginary situations and really get lost in them. So in this way of thinking, not all thoughts are like this, but this kind of thinking is dissociated with the present moment, with what is going on here and now, in our life, in our environment, in our own body, in our own heart. So when we realize that, we invite attention to step out of the thoughts, come back to feel the body, to feel the feelings, to be aware of here and now. It really helps to reconnect our thoughts with reality. We don't get so lost in our imaginary world, and we come back to the present moment reality. It really helps to, in one way, help us to be aware of how we are reacting, how we feel about a situation, and yet also help us to recognize that things have changed. The event is in the past, or the event has not yet happened, in my case, yeah. And that maybe it's all right, to let this feeling go, to let this emotion move on, and instead come back and deal with the real issue, what is happening here and now, what is needed. Yeah. So this is one way we can, through mindfulness, learn to work with our emotions and come to develop a greater confidence in our ability to relate to them, greater resilience also, and less of a fear of our own emotions. Our own emotions are not really demons; they're just our various responses to what's going on in our life. Okay, just to remind you, since this is live broadcast, if you do have any questions or comments, you're most welcome to post them on the live chat. Yeah. So through these different sessions, I also introduce you to 4 different very beneficial qualities of the heart that we can nurture. And as the more familiar we are with them, they may arise more and more frequently as our responses to the different situations in our life, the different people, the different challenges. So there is loving kindness, there is compassion, there is appreciative joy, and there is equanimity. Right? So there's no one fixed way in which we need to feel or we must respond. Instead, there is a great freedom when we have many different possibilities and options, which is why I quite like the idea that at any moment, regardless of what happened, I don't really know for sure how I would respond, how my heart will respond. It has different options, and part of practice is to learn to trust in our own response. Also, learn to be more and more responsive to the changes in our life. So, occasionally, in certain situation, you may find spontaneously kindness arise, love, and we can act out of that loving intention. Another situation, maybe compassion is triggered, and we find ourselves acting from a compassionate intention. Yet another occasion, we find spontaneously joy arise. We're simply happy, joyful, appreciative of what is here, what is in our life. And of course, there is equanimity, which I hope to meditate on today. And at no point of time is there any fixed schedule. Oh, so many hours of love, so many hours of compassion, a certain number of joy. Or nor is there any kind of directive saying that love is the only acceptable response. Maybe not. Maybe sometimes having a nap might be an appropriate response. Taking a break, have a rest from all this emotional turmoil might be the appropriate response. So there is nothing fixed, but instead of having an idea that there is a fixed or best way, best emotions to feel at all times or in all situations, maybe we can replace that image with something a lot more flexible, responsive. It makes for more occasion of pleasant surprise, that we surprise ourselves by our own response, hopefully in a good way, not in a bad way, and that we are in a way free to respond differently. Yeah. So I find that much more realistic, and also a much more helpful way of thinking, of working with emotions and how our emotions enrich our life. If we always have only one emotional response, it might seem nice and also easy to talk about, simple to visualize, but life is so complicated. There's all these ups and downs, there's all these good things and bad things, pleasant things, unpleasant things, punctuated with many moments of neither here nor there, neutral feelings. Maybe that it's not ideal to just have just one emotional response possible. Maybe it's so much better, since we are naturally endowed with all these different feelings and emotions to be able to respond differently. Yeah. So let's talk about nurturing equanimity, because equanimity is precisely that heartfelt quality that gives us the strength to face all these changing circumstances in our life, to face up to the different emotions that might be triggered. Equanimity is not indifference or coldness or unfeeling. Doesn't mean that you don't feel anything when you're equanimous. Doesn't mean you don't react at all. You're completely flatline. No. In fact, equanimity gives great courage to us, great strength, that we free us to feel different feelings, to meet different kind of reactions that has been triggered, and not feel that we will be overwhelmed by them. It gives us great resilience. And the way we cultivate this equanimous response is to empower ourselves, is to remind ourselves, at least in this method I'm using, that our choices are very powerful, that our actions, whatever we choose to do or to refrain from doing, those are also actions, are very powerful and are continuously helping us to shape the future. Now, the important thing here is with the actions, the intention and the action, not the outcome. Because we can make choices, we can choose to act or not act. But what we cannot absolutely control is the outcome of our actions. Of course, we want certain things. We act in a certain way, we want certain consequences, certain outcomes. We long for the fulfillment of our wishes or desires. But if you focus too much on the outcome, you may find that outcomes are not 100% determined by us. We don't get to choose, although we hope to, but we don't get to choose the outcome. We can choose the choices we make, the kind of actions we engage in, but the outcomes depends on many more conditions, depend on how another person may react, depend on the circumstances, depending on so many other changing conditions. So we can never be sure, or we cannot guarantee a specific outcome. All we can really do is at each moment, we can make choices, hopefully with wisdom. We can again and again choose to do the same thing or to do different thing. We can again and again choose to act towards a certain direction, towards achieving certain goal we have in mind. So we just keep taking the action. We just keep creating those causes and conditions, and then see what happens. So we empower ourselves by focusing on that aspect that we are able to invest attention in, that we are able to, don't want to say take control of, but the fact that we can put energy into choices, into actions. And then we wait and see what is the outcome. Sometimes it's favorable, wonderful, we get what we want. Other time, maybe not. The obstacles, things didn't turn out the way we want, no problem. Each new moment offers us yet another opportunity to make choices, to act, for our own happiness and the happiness of others. And this mind state, which remind us, which empower us of what we can do and to focus on what we can do, is related to equanimity. So the phrases that are often used to cultivate an equanimous response goes like this: we are the owners of our action. In relation to myself, I will remind myself my happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, not merely on my wishes for myself. And that's it. It's as simple as that. Just telling myself, we are the owners of our actions. My happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, not merely on my wishes for myself. I think it's a bit strange to just kind of keep repeating a broken tape recorder, slowly, mindfully, a phrase like this, which you're most welcome to change as you develop your own understanding of equanimity. But for me, that is very empowering. It sort of reminds me that I'm not enslaved to the different reactions that might be triggered. I might feel angry, or I might feel depressed, I might feel anxious. Doesn't matter. Feelings come, feelings go. But at any moment, especially with awareness, with mindfulness, I can make a choice. I can choose to choose to follow those train of thoughts, which, for example, when I'm down, I can indulge in very negative way of thinking. But with awareness, I can say, well, maybe not. No, much better to think about something else than to keep following this negative loop of thinking. So I have a choice. And by making those choices and by feeling empowered enough to make those choices, to act differently, I am shaping my future. I'm, instead of just passively going along, following my old habits of reaction, I am realigning myself. I'm setting out in a different direction. No guarantee what is the outcome, but often it's better, it's better to take a more proactive stance, to work towards something that I really want, as opposed to entrust it to my habits, which just react instinctively, not always to my advantage or for my benefits. Yeah. So that is equanimity in relation to oneself. very empowering, not at all weak, not at all indifference. It is built on the basis of really seeing clearly what is happening with awareness, and yet remind ourselves what we can do. In relation to another person, is learning how to draw the line, understanding what I can do for this person and what this person also must do for themselves. So it goes, we are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions, not merely on my wishes for you. Which is a even more difficult one, I think, to wrap our head around. But when we do, we can see very clearly, we can feel empowered in what I can do to support this person, to help this person. And yet at the same time, we also need to acknowledge that what the choices this person make, the kind of behavior this person keep entering into, has a profound impact on their experiences of happiness and unhappiness. And that is something we, just like the weather, we quite often do not have absolute control over. So we figure out what we can work with, what we can, in a sense, control, and we put energy into that. And we also acknowledge what is beyond our control. Okay, and through this process, we might find that it helps our mind, our body, our heart to come back into a state of balance. No longer pull up and down, left and right by the changing circumstances in our life. We find a certain still point, a place of strength, of power within ourselves through equanimity. So there are some of the ideas I have in relation to equanimity. So I would invite you to join me, and we do one meditation on equanimity and just explore this idea of this mind state or the state of the heart of equanimity, especially from the perspective of actions, or in Buddhism we call karma. This whole idea that we are, each one of us are the owners of our actions, that we, by the way we act, by the choices we made, or by what we didn't do or failed to make, there are consequences that come back to impact our life, impact our experience of happiness or unhappiness. And therefore, each moment, each new moment can offer me yet another opportunity. It's very positive. I really like this way of thinking. Yet another opportunity to make a choice, a different choice. Choose a different course of actions, or the same one, whichever. And then by creating those courses, and that interact with other conditions, it will bring about some results. And if it's not what we want, no problem. Make a different choice, act again in the same or different way, and then see what happens. And of course, if the outcome is what we like, by all means, please enjoy it, since we put in so much effort to accomplish it. Yeah. So let's do a very short meditation on equanimity. So I invite you to settle back into your meditation posture, taking care that your spine, your back is comfortable in this position. Let's start with a few deep breaths, breathing in and out deeply, and reminding ourselves to release on the out breath. We allow the breath to settle back to its natural rhythm. And at least for a few minutes at the beginning of this meditation, we invite our attention to come back, reconnect with the breath sensations, to fully experience the in-breath and the out-breath. Coming back to the breath, each time we notice an out-breath, See if we can remind ourselves as we breathe out that we can release without any effort on our part as we breathe out. Maybe some of the unnecessary tensions or tightness in the body, some of the agitation of the mind might just flow away with the breath. And then putting aside the breath for the time being, let's pick up a different object of meditation. Slowly, mindfully, let's repeat the phrases of equanimity. And feel free to change the words if you like, adjust them in whichever way you see fit. And as we repeat the phrases mindfully, slowly, with a pause in between, see what is triggered by the words, by the meanings, by the implications from within yourself, from within your own heart and mind. We are the owners of our actions. My happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, not merely on my wishes for myself. We are the owners of our actions. My happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, not merely on my wishes for myself. As we repeat the phrases to ourselves in our own mind, feel free to explore it in your own way. You might want to ponder a little bit, think about the implications, what does the words mean to you, whether you agree or disagree with it. Or as you say the words, can allow them to trigger different images or memories, different kind of reactions from within yourself. You might want to pay attention to those reactions, ponder about them. But again and again, when you do feel that you are distracted, far away from the theme of the meditation, simply come back to the words and say them again to yourself. We are the owners of our actions. My happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, not merely on my wishes for myself. Coming back to your phrases of equanimity, and as we say the word, stay mindful to its deeper implication, stay mindful to the intention behind the words. We are the owners of our actions. My happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, not merely on my wishes for myself. In this particular version of the phrases of equanimity, I am reminding myself of the power of my choices that I can make again and again with each new moment that arrive here and now. Each new moment, I can choose to act or not. I can choose to follow my old habits. I can choose a different course of actions. And it is through my actions, through accumulating the different causes and conditions, that I reshape my future, that I create my future or even present happiness. We are the owners of our actions. My happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, not merely on my wishes for myself. So coming back to this moment, coming back to the phrases of equanimity, slowly, mindfully, as you repeat the words, see if you can find your way to your own understanding of what it means to be equanimous. We are the owners of our action. My happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, not merely on my wishes for myself. And then feel free to continue exploring equanimity in relation to oneself. But if you like, you might also want to take this opportunity and shift your focus to someone else. and explore what does it mean to be equanimous in relation to another person. So for that, see if you can choose someone close to you, someone you know quite well, someone you care about, you love. Bring that person to mind and repeat similar phrases directed to this person and observe how you react to the words. We are the owners of our action. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions, not merely on my wishes for you. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions, not merely on my wishes for you. So, coming back to the phrases, the words, we are the owners of our action. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions, not merely on my wishes for you. See if the words trigger different thoughts and reactions, and explore the lines of responsibility, the boundaries between ourselves and our loved ones, on what we can and cannot help another person, on what we can and cannot take responsibility for. We are the owners of our actions. Your happiness and unhappiness depend on your actions, not merely on my wishes for you. Okay, so this session I revisited mindfulness and tried to bring together how the cultivation of mindfulness really help us to work with our emotions, and we look at nurturing yet another of those sometimes called the four sublime abiding of the heart. Sublime because there are something really special about these four qualities of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And when the heart is able to abide in any one of them, it confers the heart with a great sense of strength and power and wholesomeness. Yeah. So, and in particular today we look at equanimity, which is probably the not the hardest to cultivate, but the hardest to wrap our head around what really is, what is referring to. And I think it's good instead of trying to get a fixed definition to just explore it. Like for example, in the light of phrases such as the one I recommend, to really kind of explore it in our own experience and build up our own understanding of what it means and what are its implications. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention in this session. And I wish you a good week ahead, and take care and stay safe. And I will see you next week. So good night.